My child, everything is about to change. Because what is reaching you now was never meant to stay hidden forever. One final message has been waiting for the exact moment when your heart was ready to receive it. And if you ignore it today, the opportunity connected to it may quietly slip away. Don't skip. Because every word you are about to hear carries a piece of a story that has remained unfinished for far too long. Listen carefully. For a long time, silence has stood between you and the person whose soul has remained connected to yours in ways neither distance nor time could erase. There were nights when they wanted to speak, but fear closed their lips. There were mornings when they promised themselves they would finally tell you everything, yet another obstacle appeared before they could take even a single step toward you. While the world believed they had moved on, their heart continued returning to the same place. To the same memories. To the same unanswered questions that always carried your name. They smiled in front of others, but inside they carried a conversation that had never truly ended. Every important decision they made somehow led them back to thinking about you. Every celebration felt incomplete because one chair remained empty in their heart, and that empty place silently belonged to you. They tried convincing themselves that forgetting you would be easier than facing the truth, yet the harder they tried to forget, the stronger the connection became. Even people close to them began noticing that something was missing, although nobody understood exactly what it was. They kept pretending everything was normal while quietly carrying a burden that grew heavier with every passing day. Recently, something happened that they never expected. A simple conversation unexpectedly turned into a powerful reminder of everything they had been hiding. Someone mentioned your name without realizing the impact those words would have. The room became silent. Your soulmate could no longer hide the emotions they had buried beneath years of forced strength. Memories they had locked away returned all at once. They remembered promises that were never broken, only interrupted. They remembered moments when destiny seemed close enough to touch before circumstances suddenly pulled everything apart. They realized that the greatest mistake was never loving you. It was believing they still had unlimited time to tell you the truth. That realization stayed with them through the entire night. Sleep refused to come. Every hour felt heavier than the last until they finally reached a decision they had avoided for far too long. If they remained silent one more day, they feared the distance between your hearts would become permanent. That fear became stronger than their pride, stronger than their doubts, and stronger than every excuse they had been using to protect themselves. Don't skip. Because this was the exact moment everything quietly began changing. Before sunrise, they found something they had hidden away long ago. It was not an expensive gift, nor a dramatic symbol meant for anyone else to see. It was a message. Unfinished, deeply personal, and written during one of the most emotional nights of their life. They had started writing it when they believed they had already lost you forever. Every sentence carried regret. Every line revealed feelings they had never spoken aloud. But before they could send it, fear convinced them to hide it instead. That message remained untouched for a very long time, waiting in silence while seasons changed, People came and went, and life continued pretending nothing important had been left behind. Yet destiny has a strange way of returning unfinished stories exactly when they are needed most. Today, that forgotten message has finally been opened again. Your soulmate read every single word they once wrote, and with each sentence their eyes filled with emotions they could no longer control. By the time they reached the final paragraph, they understood something they could no longer deny. If this message never reached you, they might spend the rest of their life wondering what could have happened had they simply found the courage to press send. They looked at the screen for a long time. Their hands trembled. Their heart raced with uncertainty. One final choice remained before them. Send the message. Or let silence win forever. At that exact moment, something unexpected happened that made their decision even more urgent. A phone call interrupted everything, and the voice on the other end delivered news that neither of you could have predicted. The voice on the other end spoke calmly at first, but every sentence carried a weight your soulmate could not ignore. It was someone they trusted, someone who had quietly watched their struggle for a long time. The caller said, "If there is anything left unsaid, don't wait another day." Those simple words struck deeper than anyone could have imagined. For a few moments, your soulmate couldn't answer. They simply closed their eyes, holding the phone tightly as memories rushed through their mind once again. They remembered every moment they almost reached out to you but stopped themselves at the last second. They remembered every apology they rehearsed but never spoke, every message they typed and deleted before sunrise. Suddenly, all those missed chances felt heavier than ever before. They realized that time had never been their enemy. Fear had been. Fear of rejection. Fear that you had already moved on. Fear that the bridge between your hearts had disappeared forever. But in that moment, another thought became even stronger. What if you had been waiting too? What if silence had been hurting both of you all along? They ended the call, opened the message once again, and slowly began reading it aloud to themselves. Every line carried honesty that could no longer be hidden. It spoke of sleepless nights, quiet tears, and the painful truth that no matter how many people entered their life, nobody ever replaced the place you held inside their heart. They admitted to themselves that pretending to be happy had become exhausting. The message wasn't written to impress you. It wasn't filled with perfect words. Instead, it carried something much more powerful: truth. A truth they had hidden even from themselves. As they reached the final paragraph, their finger hovered over the send button. One small touch could finally deliver everything they had carried for so long. Yet another hesitation appeared. They whispered softly, "What if it's already too late?" That question echoed through the silent room, but instead of receiving an answer, something unexpected happened. Don't skip. Because destiny had one more surprise waiting. A notification suddenly appeared on the screen. It wasn't from you. It wasn't from a stranger either. It was an old photograph automatically resurfacing from years ago. In that picture, there was a smile your soulmate had not seen in a very long time. Looking at it reminded them of a promise once made deep inside their heart, a promise that no matter how complicated life became, they would never allow fear to destroy something real. Tears quietly rolled down their face as they realized how far they had drifted from that promise. They no longer saw the photograph as a coincidence. To them, it felt like one final reminder that life was offering a last opportunity before another chapter closed forever. They whispered your name, not loudly, but with a sincerity that only the heart could understand. For the first time in a long while, hope returned. They carefully edited just one sentence inside the message before sending it. That final sentence simply read, "If this reaches you, please know that I never stopped carrying you in my heart." Those words were enough. Nothing more needed to be added. Their fingers slowly moved toward the send button. Every heartbeat felt louder than the last. The room became completely silent. It seemed as though even time itself had paused to witness this decision. Then, with one deep breath, they finally pressed send. The message disappeared from their screen, and for a brief moment they felt both relief and fear. Relief because the truth was no longer hidden. Fear because they had no idea what would happen next. Would you read it? Would you ignore it? Or had destiny already prepared something neither of you expected? Only a few seconds passed before their phone vibrated again. They looked down expecting nothing more than an ordinary notification. Instead, what appeared on the screen made their entire body freeze. It wasn't a reply. It wasn't even your name. It was a message from someone connected to both of your pasts, carrying only one shocking sentence. There's something you still don't know about what really happened between you two. Your soulmate stared at that single sentence without blinking. Their heart began racing because the message had come from the one person who had disappeared just before everything between the two of you fell apart. For years they had believed that person knew far more than they had ever admitted, but there had never been any proof. Now, after all this time, they were suddenly reaching out. Your soulmate hesitated for only a moment before opening the conversation. The next message appeared almost immediately. I can't keep this secret anymore. You deserve to know why everything changed so suddenly. Those words sent a chill through the room. Every unanswered question from the past came rushing back. Every confusing goodbye. Every unexplained silence. Every strange misunderstanding suddenly felt connected to something much bigger. Your soulmate leaned back, trying to steady their breathing, but nothing could prepare them for what they were about to read. The person confessed that years ago, when your connection was becoming stronger than ever, someone close to both of you had quietly interfered. They had hidden important conversations, twisted simple words into painful misunderstandings, and convinced each side that the other had chosen to walk away. It was never one dramatic event that separated you. It was a chain of silent manipulations that slowly built an invisible wall between two hearts that still cared deeply for one another. Your soulmate felt their hands trembling. They replayed every memory in their mind, and for the first time, pieces that never made sense suddenly began fitting together. They realized they had blamed themselves. And sometimes even blamed you. Without ever knowing that someone else had been controlling the story from behind the scenes. Don't skip. Because the truth was only beginning to unfold. The confession continued with details so specific that they could no longer be dismissed as guesses. Dates matched forgotten memories. Places matched moments your soulmate had tried to erase. Even small conversations they thought had been private had somehow been altered before reaching you. They remembered waiting endlessly for a reply that never came, never realizing the message had never reached you at all. They remembered believing you had stopped caring, while in reality you had been carrying the exact same pain from the opposite side. The realization hit like a storm. Years of regret suddenly transformed into heartbreak for an entirely different reason. It wasn't lost love that hurt the most. It was discovering how close both of you had remained while believing you were impossibly far apart. Tears filled their eyes as they whispered, "If only we had known sooner." But life does not move backward. It only offers moments where courage can change what fear once destroyed. That thought gave your soulmate strength they hadn't felt in years. They knew they could no longer allow another misunderstanding to steal what destiny had protected all this time. Whatever happened next, they were determined to face it with honesty instead of silence. Just as they prepared to reply, another notification appeared. This one was completely unexpected. It wasn't from the person confessing the secret. It wasn't from anyone connected to the past. It was a delivery confirmation. The final message they had sent to you had finally been opened. For several long seconds, nothing happened. Your soulmate watched the screen, barely breathing. Then the familiar typing indicator appeared. Disappeared. And appeared again. Whoever was on the other side was carefully choosing every word. Those few seconds felt longer than entire years. Your soulmate closed their eyes, silently hoping that destiny had not brought them this far only to end the story in silence once again. When the reply finally arrived, it contained only a single sentence, but that sentence carried enough emotion to change everything they believed about the future. The words were simple, gentle, and impossible to ignore. There is something I have wanted to tell you for a very long time. But we cannot have this conversation until you discover who really stopped us from being together. The moment your soulmate finished reading those words, another notification flashed across the screen. This time it included a name. A name neither of you ever expected to see connected to the greatest secret of your lives. The name on the screen remained there for several silent seconds. Your soulmate could hardly believe what they were seeing. It was someone they had trusted without question, someone who had always appeared supportive, kind, and concerned about both of your futures. Never once had they imagined that this person had quietly stood between two hearts, changing small details that eventually created enormous misunderstandings. At first, your soulmate wanted to deny it. Surely there had to be another explanation. Surely the truth couldn't be this painful. But as more forgotten conversations, old screenshots, and long-buried memories were carefully pieced together, everything began making sense. Every confusing silence. Every delayed message. Every sudden change in attitude. Every moment that once felt impossible to explain finally had an answer. The story had never been about two people falling out of love. It had always been about truth being hidden until the right moment arrived. That realization didn't erase the years that had passed, but it lifted a burden your soulmate had carried for far too long. For the first time in years, they stopped blaming themselves. And they stopped believing that you had chosen to walk away. Don't skip. Because this became the beginning of healing rather than the end of heartbreak. Your soulmate didn't rush to confront anyone. Instead, they chose something far more powerful. They chose honesty. They opened your conversation once again and wrote from the heart, without fear, without pride, and without trying to change the past. They admitted every mistake they had made, every assumption they had believed, and every day they had wished they had found the courage to reach out sooner. They didn't ask for immediate forgiveness. They didn't demand another chance. They simply offered the truth that had been missing for so long. Then they waited. Not with anxiety this time, but with peace. They understood that genuine love cannot be forced, but it can always be expressed with sincerity. Moments later, your reply appeared. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't filled with impossible promises. It simply said, "Thank you for finally telling me the truth. No matter what happens next, I'm grateful that silence no longer stands between us." Those words brought tears to your soulmate's eyes because they realized something beautiful. Sometimes the greatest miracle is not turning back time. It's finally removing the lies that kept two hearts apart. As the days passed, conversations that had once seemed impossible became natural again. Questions that had remained unanswered for years were gently explored one by one. There were moments of laughter, moments of tears, and moments of quiet reflection. Neither of you pretended that the past had been easy, but both of you chose not to let it define the future. The person who had created the misunderstandings eventually admitted what they had done. Their confession didn't change history, but it confirmed everything your soulmate had discovered. With that truth finally revealed, the weight of uncertainty disappeared forever. The final message that had almost remained unsent became the very thing that opened a new chapter neither of you thought was still possible. Before putting the phone away that evening, your soulmate looked at the first message they had almost deleted forever. They smiled softly, grateful that fear had not won the final battle. One simple decision to press send had changed everything. It reminded them that the most important words are often the ones we are most afraid to speak. Somewhere deep inside, they felt hope returning, not because every problem had disappeared, but because truth had finally found its voice. And perhaps that was the real miracle all along. If this story found you today, let it remind you of one timeless truth: honest words spoken with courage are never wasted. Even when life seems to separate hearts, truth has a remarkable way of finding its path. Sometimes one sincere message can heal years of silence, restore forgotten hope, and open a door that everyone believed had already closed forever.